So if we feel like we need more room, that this is not enough, then we can always just go to File, either Open Workspace, and find the folder that we want to use. So I created a new folder to contain my HTML elements, and that also contains my CCF data structures project, as well as some other stuff. But if we even wanted to go a level higher, you could go ahead and click the parent directory. It really just depends on where you want to keep everything. I can open my coding. I think Workspace is looking specifically for a file, or a solution. So don't use Open Workspace. Use Open, and that way we could just pick whichever file we want. And now in here, I can go through all my files I have. And keep them all separated and structured. Everybody able to get like an HTML page open? And no? Okay.
Okay, now I've got the orange tags. All right. Oh, can I just rename?
Yeah.
Rename it in the
Yeah.
HTML?
If you read, I'll show you. Yeah. If I.
Mine's just titled new.html. I don't rename it.
Cool. Yes. Your IDE, your code editor, is going to read this .html. That's called a file extension, and that's what lets your IDE know what type of file it is. If I rename this to JavaScript, it thinks it's a JavaScript file. See that? I don't have any words written in here, but it thinks it's a JavaScript file. The same way, if I renamed it, I called it Java, I called it Ruby. Oh, it doesn't like Ruby. But you get my point. Vue, Python, right? It's not changing anything. It's just trying to understand what the file type is, so it knows what shortcuts and stuff to provide to you. So that's if we just type in text, we have a text file, but now when I type in HTML, the IDE doesn't interpret this as an HTML file, and so it's not going to give me the HTML snippets, including the one that we all just installed. So I'll come over here and I'll rename this back so that it's HTML. Now that I have it so that I have these brackets, all you have to do is type HTML, and then if you go down to the boilerplate and hit enter, this is essentially everything you need to create a website. And I can put hello. Oh, I forgot I need to go all the way on. Okay, cd. Open. Where's my hello? So I just saved this HTML file. I'm going to refresh this. Is it?
And so we're VS Code, we're making changes, we save our changes, and then we just open up the HTML file within our local browser, and then we see our updates, right?
Oh, I just realized I was changing the wrong thing. So you can see the this top part. That's not going to blow up. But I changed the title of this. So now if I come into the body, if I put in a div, and I say hello world. So all I did was I did that HTML snippet, which loaded all this stuff for me, and I created a div element. I'll do that again real quick. You don't need this stuff. This is a comment in HTML, so we don't need that. That's just a check for Internet Explorer. If you're not aware, Internet Explorer is awful. Don't use it. And so all I did was I went into the body tag. Again, body is going to contain everything for your HTML element. You'll notice head contains a lot of like scripts and data. Right here, this style sheet is talking about CSS. So we're not talking about CSS yet, but when you see style sheet, that's just CSS. And eventually what we're going to do is we're going to refer to some sort of file directory where there's a file.css which contains all of our styling. We're not going to talk about that right now. I just want to get everybody acquainted with HTML. So I'm in this blank HTML file. Now that we have this boilerplate, I can type in HTML, scroll down. I'll erase this comment. And now, if I put a div and hit enter, it opens it for me automatically. I have some other styling extensions, so maybe your editor doesn't exactly do this automatically. I can show you guys my extensions, all of my extensions here in a second. But if we put hello world here and save it, and then go back, we see hello world. I wanted to do style equals color blue. This is CSS. This is called inline CSS. If you want, you could type this in too. Make sure you save. And when I refresh, it's kind of hard to see, but now the text is blue. Do I have any pictures? Maybe I could download a picture real quick to show you guys.
Greg, where are you clicking on save?
I'm hitting Command S.
Command S.
Yes, so I believe if you come up here, it should tell you what the shortcut is.
Okay.
And it's like hardwired in my brain. I do it all the time. You might see me sometimes do this, where I do it on this web page. So this is what comes up. It's like, oh, you want to save this web page? And I'm like, ah, no, whoops. Like it's like melted into my brain, just constantly Command S, Control S, Control S, Command S, over and over and over again, constantly saving the work. So that's the shortcut I used.
Can we use single quotes or have to be double quotes?
I believe it can be single.
Then how did you get the little like the blue color spots?
This might be an extension. So if you have the div tag just like this, where it just says hello world, all I did was style, which is inline CSS.
Oh, I closed out the div.
There you go. This is CSS right here. This is like a little sneak preview, but this is called inline styling, so you don't need a CSS file. And then when I hit equals and I put it in a string, and again, this is why I love IDEs, because it shows you every possible selection you could do. So I know that color for a fact changes the color of the text, so I thought that would be a quick and easy example. I'll do crimson, and then my IDE just automatically pops that little box up. And then when I save it, it's still blue because it's reading off of that last version that I loaded this file off of. But when I refresh, now it's red. And this is called static HTML files. It's the same thing as if I was to come in here . Let's see. Oh, I need to select the element. See? Color crimson. Remember I was messing with all those other things in here? This is CSS, but when I come into the editor, I can see color crimson.
Just find those colors. I remember the old codes.
I'll show you. Let me pull this out. So for me, the shortcut is Command Alt I. It is different on every browser. If you're lost, you have no idea, you can always right-click and go to Inspect Element. That's the same thing. And then all I'm doing is over here, Elements. We have our HTML, right? We have head, we have body, just like every other website on the planet, essentially. But over here on the right, if you notice, it says styles, because that's CSS, cascading style sheet. So these are our styles, but this is just talking about our HTML page in general. If we click on this right here, It might look like a crosshair for you. It might look like a little cursor or whatever. If we click it, it should turn blue. And then when we go over and we click on our word, that's when we see the little inline styling that we added to it. Now if I wanted, I could do a green, turns green. Let's see, border, coral. Whoa, got rid of it.
You don't have a whole list of all the colors.
The IDE kind of does that for you. You do have a list of all colors. The limitation here is probably that we're in an HTML file. If you were in CSS, it would show you all the colors. But actually, these ones that are listed are kind of your limitation. The way around this, if you don't want to pick like pink, if you're like, I don't like any of these colors, then you have to do either RGB or a hex code. So there is a difference. Hex codes, I think we talked about this a little bit.
What's the old stuff?
They both work. That's the thing, is HTML's been around for a while. So if you wanted, I could copy this, color, that. See that? It automatically knew what I was talking about. So this is a hex code. Now, I accidentally, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Save that. Refresh, and now it goes to that color. So if you want, you can use a hex code editor. You can also use RGB values. Do the same thing here. Now, when you type in RGB and you hit enter, it shows you right here what the values are for each given RGB value. So like if I wanted red to be 100, I wanted green to be 20, and I wanted blue to be I don't know, 250. We get this like weird dark purple, and again, changes the color. Does that make sense to everybody? So I know that I kind of just like shotgunned all this information onto you guys, but that's because I think that this HTML section is very well done. So I just wanted to show you guys that snippet because it helps get you guys started a lot quicker. I wanted to talk about proper indentation to make sure you guys like knew how HTML should look. But honestly, like this curriculum is pretty good. So definitely give it a go in your free time, especially since you have the weekend, and just read through it, try to understand it the best you can. And again, so we already talked about this, the unordered list, that's the UL element. The ordered list is the LI element. A heading is an H1 to H6 span. So it goes into detail on these things, right? This is why I kind of don't want to necessarily spend all this time explaining in detail what these are, because the curriculum already goes into it. What we just did was inline styling, but there are two different ways of referencing HTML elements. The curriculum goes into that very nicely. Again, we can see, so in just this example, we see table open here, no closer, so we have another indentation, no closer, indentation, no closer. Finally, we get the closer so we can keep them on the same line. And then corresponding indentation for closing elements, table head. T-head stands for table head. So we have our table. We're creating a table element in HTML. As a matter of fact, why mess around? Let's throw it in. Now, this is an extension. This isn't errors. It's just saying you indented it improperly. This happens when you copy and paste code. I asked my instructors. They said there's no way around it. So just be prepared to have to like fix some indentation when you copy and paste HTML. Oh, I closed it. Whoops. So this is, as far as I know, a command that is only available on Mac for whatever reason. But if you type in open and then the name of the file, it works. See, I just copied and pasted this over to create this table. I didn't do any work. And that's the same thing with actually like a lot of HTML. If I wanted to create a form, we could exit this table and I can just paste that in. And now when I refresh this, now I have a form. I'm Greg. What's up? Boop. So when you hit submit, the browser automatically sends a GET request to a URL, and if I refresh this page, it probably should. If I refresh this page, hopefully it'll show me where it's trying to take me. But essentially, this is always going to try and send you to someplace else. Where does it take me? Okay, so fake HTML, let's click submit. Oh, so it tries to submit my input values into our page. So you see at the very top, it might be hard to see. I can't pump up my URL list, but what happened was it took those two values that I put inside those inputs, and then when I hit the submit button, it tried to add them to the end of my URL. So it ended up erroring out because it's not a real file, it's not a real page, right? Just like how we were looking at About Me earlier, when I was able to scroll down here and I can see that it just appends fiddle.js.shell to home. That's the same thing that's going on in our fake HTML file. It's just broken right now because we don't necessarily have any functionality wired up to that. One thing you could do to prevent that is on submit right here. We could do prevent default. Might need to take it out of the strings. Need to go back. Okay. Submit. I might be getting into DOM a little too early here. That's essentially what's going on. Well, we'll have to get into JavaScript to prevent that from happening. We could probably write a script right here, actually. So if we wanted to prevent this from submitting, we have our input value, and again, I just grabbed this from, I went to W3, and I just grabbed it from their example. They have a ton of different examples. If I wanted, I could go ahead and copy these in as well. It really does not matter. There's practically no new HTML under the sun, unfortunately. Oh, it added my little function there. Yeah, so that's definitely not working. Now you can see this little radial menu. Now, obviously this doesn't look like a professional website, but you can see just how quickly I am able to import like input fields that I'm able to type into and then actually send off somewhere with like very minimal work. Now, the reason that's happening, I noticed, was that it's trying to send me over here. There we go. So another cool thing, you might not know this, is you can actually use your web browser as a file browser as well. So what just happened is I redirected myself to my root directory, and now I'm able to look at my file system. Yeah, so if I was so inclined, I could go to home. Nope. What is it? Gregory? Go to Galvanize, entirely new. This is for HTML, and now I'm back. Because I use the web browser as a file browser to get back to my locally hosted HTML file. Again, it's kind of hard to see, but this is actually reading off of my hard drive. This isn't online. Eventually, we're going to be able to host these on a fake server that we spin up on our computer, and that way we can mimic and test actually hosting this with something like Heroku. But for now, we're essentially just hosting this HTML file on our machine. So there's no danger of accidentally exposing any information here. Don't worry about accidentally like putting in your password or something like that, unless you have like malware, which is like key logging, which at that case there's nothing that's going to help you. But there's no bad things that can happen from just messing around with an HTML file on your local machine. This is Bootstrap. This is a CSS framework that we will get into. Not today. Not today. And so here we have forms. And this is another HTML exercise. And so if I came here, I saw we have a base opening form, a base closing form, and I see it wants an input for username, favorite color, and galvanized cohort. Well, let's see. This is a form. So what happens if I Google HTML forms? Well, it just so happens I come here, and we can read about it. What are the different types? If you want to just input text, you can have that, and it defines a one-line input text field, a radio button. Let me reopen this one. This is radio. So this is kind of like, only one possible option could be accepted. This is a radio selection. So let me go back. So we have text. Right here, text. We have radio. And then finally we have submit, which is essentially our button right here on the bottom. So if we wanted to have an input text field for a username, this looks pretty good to me. Why don't I just copy this from this website and I'll just paste it in here. Okay, so it didn't want a first name, it wanted a username, but let's run this. All of a sudden we have an input field because I looked up forms. Again, HTML forms is all I Googled. The second thing right here, W3 schools. Again, W3 is a little more English, MDN is a little more computer. So that's all I did. And again, I'm right back here because we're dealing with forms. And this challenge specifically asks me to have inputs for each of these different types. And so, can anybody tell me how I could probably have an input for my favorite color? How could I add another input so that instead of looking for my username, I'm looking for my favorite color?
It's going to be the same type of code, but instead of where you have name equals username, it would be color equals favorite color.
You're close, but you're right on the money. Actually, name stays the same.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's literally just another text input. And this is kind of like, this is HTML, right? So now it wants an input for our cohort. So what should I do? Man. This is really hard. So here, I'm not trying to be condescending or anything. I'm just joking. I apologize if anybody took offense to that, but I'm just trying to show like HTML really is just like a lot of copying and pasting, and you're never going to write any original HTML. Like HTML has been around forever. So just copy the people that have done it the best way. Why reinvent the wheel? This one is saying that it wants a select box with at least 2 options.
That's your radial, right?
That could be a radial, but I actually couldn't remember this because it's been a while since I've worked with like vanilla HTML. So what I did was HTML drop down select. What's that? Huh. That looks good. let's take it on over. So I can delete these. We have the favorite color, we have the cohort. Now we have the location. I just paste that in. Now I'll run this so you guys can see what's going on. You see this? You see how easy that was? How much of that did I code? Nothing. I literally looked up HTML dropdown. It brought me to the correct spot of HTML select because it knew what I was talking about. And it's like, here's how you create a dropdown. Why would I go, okay, select, okay, let's see, select, okay, cool, and then what, option, okay, like, why would you do that, right? It's the same thing at the end of the day. So just, if you find the reference of the thing that you're looking for, just use it. Now, proper HTML indentation would have us take these and throw them in one, but hopefully you get the point. So now we can have like Phoenix. So value is going to be whatever these inputs are right here. And that'll matter a lot once we start working with JavaScript. So Phoenix, Tempe, Chandler, Flagstaff. Oops. So I changed the values, but the values only matter in JavaScript. If I run this, I do believe it'll stay the same thing. So there is a difference. The value matters in JavaScript, but in between these carets is what is actually going to be shown, and this is known as the inner HTML. There's a DOM method called getValue. DOM get element value. This is why value matters, is when we start implementing JavaScript, we're going to be able to grab the value from that input that they select, and then we can do cool stuff with it, like conditionally render pictures depending on the button they pick. If they pick a button that says Cancun, then we can show pictures that correspond with Cancun. If they pick a button that says Florida, we can show pictures that correspond with Florida. So that's why value matters here, and that's why it didn't change anything inside of the actual inner HTML, is because value corresponds to JavaScript. So honestly, right now, we probably don't even need this. It's still going to work the same thing. It's still going to work the same way. So as you can see, I still get Phoenix, even though I erased that. But just to drive the point home, this is here for JavaScript, which we'll get into later. And so finally, it says, don't forget a submit button. I know for a fact it's here, but if I was super lazy, HTML submit. Hey, W3. Let's see. So here's a submit button. Back on the same page. Let's see. Radio button. If I wanted a radio, let's just throw one in for fun. We don't necessarily need it, but I want it in there. We'll have that. Oh. Submit button. Right here, so make sure you're paying attention. It might pass you at first. We have input type text, and then finally input type submit. So these are inputs of text, and this is the input of submit. So we could copy and paste this entire thing, but that's not really necessary, because all we're looking for is this button, right? So if we didn't want that, we could look for where it says input type text and just delete that. Now, real quick, while this is here, BR means break. So the HTML will read that as a line break, and it will start rendering new elements on the line below it.
If you want a user input, you don't want to call it Mickey Mouse, you just leave the value empty or whatever.
You could do this. And then as they change it, it actually changes the value as well, but that's once you actually have like JavaScript listening and working with it. Right now we don't have DOM content. I would need to do DOM ready here, but that is possible. Where if you wanted it to, you could also do. See, the thing is there's like a ton of ways. So there's there's DOM get value. I forget the exact one. So there's the input text value, and that's what you could use. Get the elements by their tag, dot value, so that allows you to access that string of their value. Or you could also get the inner HTML, which would be in between the carets. So this is another way to do it. And then I believe there's a final one, which is actually inner text. Oh, I did that in caps. Yeah. So there's like 3 ways to do this, and they're essentially the same thing. Pardon me. So there's a lot of different methods. Again, H3 is awesome. If you want to look up at these DOM methods, by all means, but that's not what we're necessarily talking about right now. I just wanted to preface that the reason that value didn't necessarily change anything is because it corresponds with JavaScript DOM, and we're not using DOM right now. If I had this up, then it would be working, but I'm going to leave that off for now. So let's finish this up. I don't need an input text. I don't need this other input text. As a matter of fact, I no longer need that form because I already have a form. So let's just take this button and throw it underneath the radial menu. Yay. So it's kind of confusing looking at this because we don't actually really know what these are supposed to be, right? So an awesome HTML attribute. These are attributes, type and name. I'll Google that for you real quick. Actually, maybe it's over here already. HTML attributes. So href is an attribute. src is an attribute. When we want to start showing images, I could probably get that in there in a second. This is kind of more inline styling. This is also kind of more CSS. Again, HTML and CSS are very, very similar. So everything that you see that's like a word or like a variable name with like an equals, those are all attributes. Those are considered HTML attributes on HTML elements. So there's this HTML attribute called placeholder, which I remember because I've just used it that many times. But knowing that, you can type in placeholder equals, and if you want the person to know what it's for, you can type in a string of what that field is for. So now when I run this, you can see there's like a little grayed out, just like how when you see, I'll do this one, I'll do placeholder again, enter password. Let's run that. We've all seen that, right? But the cool thing about placeholder, this HTML attribute, is when I start typing, it gets rid of that little ghosted image. So this is how you could create like a login, right? Because I could do, here's your username, login, placeholder equals what cohort. Let's run that again. So now we see this ghosted thing. Do Phoenix. It gets rid of the text that was there. I don't know why I would do Phoenix twice, but there you go. You get the point. Username, Greg. Password, B. I'm a male. Submit. And again, submit is always going to send a GET request. And since we didn't, let me see. We didn't tell the form to go anywhere after we submit. It just says 404 because the page doesn't exist, which is correct. The page does not exist because we told it to go nowhere. And I mean, that's HTML at its core. Again, I really strongly recommend going through. We have this HTML cheat sheet.
Are you going to talk about like different tips for like design? So we're putting a page together and formatting and how many pages do I want?
That's more like CSS Bootstrap. I just kind of want to get you guys more familiar with HTML right now. But get Bootstrap. This is like industry standard. As a matter of fact, let me think. MDB React. This website is like always really slow. Oh, it's Bootstrap. again, this is like way beyond. So over here we have jQuery, which is essentially a JavaScript library that you can use if you want to. It's what a lot of people used to use before these more modern JavaScript libraries came out. So one you may have heard of is Angular. That's this little A on the right. We have React, which is another JavaScript framework, and we have Vue, which is a JavaScript framework. And these three are industry frameworks. Like if you're a JavaScript developer working in Angular, like you have a job. You know what I'm saying? Like this is like cutting edge. If you're a JavaScript programmer, these are what you're using. But before that, we had jQuery. So jQuery is essentially like augmented JavaScript. If we come down, let's see. We have CSS stuff. We have JavaScript. Let's see if we can't get a carousel. I'm curious if this will work because I'm using I'm just hosting this off my directory. See, so right here, this isn't going to work, and I know that for a fact because it's sourcing a outside image. But just to show you guys, let's see. Tired of that. Boom. Whoa. So we're missing the JavaScript, but you can see, oh, actually the image is loaded. What?
You're connected to the internet, so you can get to the location.
I guess it's only when you're sending an HTTP request to an API then. Cool. So the website I was just on is called MDB, or pardon me, mdbootstrap.com. It's free. The reason this isn't working is because we need jQuery. This is super, super way above where we're at right now, but if you were like really motivated, man, and you just want to get right into it, this is certainly available for you. Let's see, we have a contact form, Bootstrap contact form, copy code. Throw that in. Let's refresh this. Cool. Do you have any questions? Your name? No. Your email? No. Oh, let me pump this up. Hopefully you guys get what I'm trying to illustrate here, where it's really easy to just kind of go and find little HTML snippets that you like and just kind of copy and paste them in. So again, this website is mdbootstrap.com. If you wanted to look around for a couple HTML little snippets and stuff like that. If you want really basic HTML, again, W3 is great. Like right here in HTML forms, they have the most basic type of a form. Let's see. So this is talking about HTML as a language. So it talks about the styles and the formatting. If you wanted to make a comment in HTML, all the colors that are available to you, how CSS interacts with HTML. Let's see. But we want HTML elements. So we're going to click on HTML elements. Again, here's the header tag, H1. H1, we have a paragraph tag. HTML describes that it's an HTML document. Don't forget the ending tag. So this is improper HTML because every single opening needs a closing. So that will not work. As a matter of fact, let's take a look. So it is running it because it's essentially reading it as body to body. I don't think it's actually reading this p tag. If we do this, that would be proper. and it doesn't change anything. So that's a great example, but always make sure that your elements have a closing tag on them, because you're just going to run into problems where if you have an opening key tag and then let's say you have an opening span, you close the span and then you just absent-mindedly happen to close the P tag here and you forget, it's going to mess up stuff. So just be mindful, if you can close the element on the same line, that's what you want to do.
If we want a website with like 2 columns, that's a CSS thing.
I should be able to do that real quick. Hopefully I don't need to jump into CSS. Let me see.
Yeah, you don't.
It should be pretty easy, honestly. And those are famous last words, so we'll see.
Hold up here, watch this.
Yeah. So I'll create a div, and then I will create another div. Oops. So this is inline, height equals 50%, width equals 50%. Said I wasn't going to get into CSS, but this is CSS. Now it might error out because they're not in strings. I don't remember if they need to be in strings. So I guess we're going to find out. Border, style, border. We'll do salmon on one, and we'll make sure that's 10 pixels big. Let's see, style on this one. We'll do a border of slate blue, 10 pixels big. So save that. Let's see what that gets us. Don't get anything. Let's change the background color. Make sure that they are in the correct spot. Okay. It might not be reading my height and width. Yeah, so this might need CSS. Again, the same way I showed you split up the little files, the same way we did CCF data structures. If I wanted to stop doing all this inline stuff, all I would have to do is say that this div has an ID equal to number 1. ID equals number 2. No typos, I'll save that. Okay, so make sure that if you're going to do CSS, I highly encourage experimentation and trying to do your own CSS file. I just have it in the same directory. So again, when we're using this boilerplate, like I said before, this link is a style sheet. It's looking specifically for a CSS file. And just like a terminal, we reference our current directory with a // and this is why I love IDEs. You see that? Because it automatically suggests this file because it knows what I'm talking about. So I don't need to guess and hope that I'm doing the right thing. I can just come into this where it says style sheet. Again, style sheet is specific to CSS. You just hit // and then if you have a .css file that it needs this extension to understand it's a CSS file, then we can just click on that, and now we have access to the CSS file. So in order to reference IDs, there's 2 ways to reference anything. There's IDs and classes. You guys might remember I was trying to do like get elements by ID, get elements by class. This is how you reference most HTML elements. So I'm just going to do hashtag, which is how you do IDs. Periods are classes. So this would be a class, and this would be an ID. 2 different ways to reference something, and it all depends on how you write it. There's no right or wrong way. It's all however you want to do it. So let's do number 1. We'll open that up, and we'll say background color See how I'm getting the same suggestions I was before? Again, all I was doing was CSS, do 50% here. Always make sure you end your CSS statements with a semicolon. It's not going to blow up your computer, but it's just going to throw an error, so just get in the habit of it because you're going to have to do it anyway. Width, 50%. Cool. And we could probably just copy that. And we can change this to red. Okay. Thank you. Still doesn't like that. Let me try restarting. Where are my elements? It really doesn't like my 50s.
Well, your number 2 is got a capital W as well.
Thank you. So I'm going to switch this from percentages to 2 specific acronyms. They're very easy. So this one is VH. This stands for view height. So this is talking about your viewport. You may see this reference over here. It's literally just talking about this window. So this is my viewport from this corner to the upper left all the way to the bottom right. That's a viewport in HTML CSS terms. So what I'm doing here is I'm switching it from percent because I think that I probably need to actually give my body a size as well. But I'm just going to not worry about that right now. I'm going to set the height of number 1 to 50% of the view height, the viewport height. And then I'm going to set this one to 50% of the viewport width. Let's see how the IDE confirms that's correct. The percentage does work, but I think just because I am trying to do this without actually like giving the body any height or anything, I think that's what's causing the problem. There we go. So, Flexbox is another CSS thing. Again, we'll get into this. I wasn't expecting to get into CSS today, but you can see that the viewport and view height thing did fix it. If I did 100% the height, it would make them even bigger. Now, I think I would need to do display. So this is a different thing. This is like CSS extended, but I should be able to type in float now. Oh, had the autocomplete. And we'll have it float right. Oh, well, it's too big now. But you could see, let's change. Yep. So this one is taking up one block, and this one is taking up another block. I believe if I wanted to have them in the same spot, I could throw the div in this div, and I accidentally copied blank space. So all I did was instead of having them side by side, I put number 2 inside of number 1. And I need to have this display. Again, this is a little beyond where we're at right now, but I'll have this float to the left. Oh. Flexbox. And line flex, go to the left. Actually not. These are all CSS commands that you can look up by coming on over here. And right here we see height and width, right? I was just messing around with this. This element has a width of 100%, probably because it has a parent element that allows it to grow to 100%. I did not have that. That's why it didn't work. You could also do pixels. We have our colors. This is what the maximum width of something should ever be. So if you're like developing for a phone or a tablet or something like that, and you're like, I never want this picture to be bigger than this size. CSS position, static, position relative. Oh, there we go. Position relative. This probably ain't gonna work either. Are there any questions before we like wrap it up tonight? Maybe like any like curriculum you guys wanted to go over or anything like that?
I'm just curious, backing into the colors and design. So if we didn't want a blank whites page, when I was in Chrome, and when I was looking up at the site, and I opened up the console editor, it allowed me to change the background, right? So I changed the background to blue, just did one line, right? So if I want the whole site, or maybe a border, right? A border, one single color. Is the border something different? Would I have to make a blue background and then a white border, or a white square rectangle on top of that?
No, it's part of CSS. So that looks absolutely terrible because I didn't give my body any size. Like I said, 100% of the view height. We'll give it the width of 100% of the view width. So you can see the math doesn't add up because there's margins getting added. So even though the math is this should be 40 and this should be 40, so that's 80. Because this is 100, 100, and then this is also adding width, it's kind of like popping itself out over there. If I take this, let's fix this. Now I should be able to do like the 50% thing because now I've given the body size. So let's do 50%, 50%, 50%. Oh, I should have done 40. Oh, I thought I moved it. See, so that's what happens when you don't correctly close your tags. Is I was expecting these to both be the same size, but because I accidentally didn't close it in the right spot, it just so happened to actually end up in this spot right here. Actually, it's because of this.
You want a contact form on every page, so no matter where they're at in the site, just a form away from contacting you. Is that also in CSS? I can put a form in CSS so it's on every page.
Yeah. So let me. I'll do the not the width. Sorry, the height. I'll do 200, and then I'll do a div here. Number one, we'll make the width 100%. Let's just get rid of this for now. And then if we make the position fixed, it will stay with the viewport. And then we want to get rid of the float. I messed that up. Why is the div still there? Because I didn't save. So see that? I mean, this is extraordinarily scrappy, but I'm scrolling and I'm keeping. See, so I can already tell there's a margin on this element. Oh no, there's a position blocking it. Why is it not going to the top? This is typically why you'll end up using Bootstrap, because dealing with vanilla CSS is kind of confusing at times. So instead, let's do.
Only sites get these downloads, so if you want to use their CSS, download these files. So I downloaded a couple zip files. So in order to use whatever features they have, we have to include that into our code.
And the way I did that, again, the reason I had you guys download that boilerplate is because it just makes it so much easier on you guys. It's so much less to remember. Again, if I just take this and I completely delete everything. I'll save it. With that code, I just type in HTML boilerplate, and then again, these are comments, so you could just get rid of that, and then like whatever HTML you find, you can just throw in here. Once you're ready to start doing JavaScript, I don't expect anybody to be at that point. This is where you would actually insert your JavaScript file. So just for explanation purposes, down here. So
the thing that still gets me is like I get what HTML is trying to do. I can build stuff, organize things, you know, I'm gonna make calls and do things, and CSS is gonna help me have consistency format. JavaScript, I still don't know what it does. I'm not sold on it. Like, I don't know why I didn't do this.
yeah, I definitely understand that. And that's why I brought up at the beginning of class, like I talked with Melissa and I squared up on what the expectations were, because I was trying to like front load you guys with as much JavaScript as possible. And then when I spoke with her, I realized that she wanted me to more focus on like HTML and then like using JavaScript with HTML. So I probably went a little overboard, honestly, on going over all the like the intricate JavaScript and stuff, especially with like how fast I did it. But after speaking with Melissa today, now I understand what her goal is, and I got this presentation guideline for you guys. Now I know like exactly what we should be focusing on, and I'll make sure that when we start talking about JavaScript in relation to HTML, that it makes sense and it's easy for you guys to implement it. Again, I said this a few times, but this CCF thing is extraordinarily hard. This is probably one of the hardest coding challenges you're gonna do. Where did I put it? Oh, right here. This is no joke. Like this is very, very hard. That's why I wanted to give it to you guys, because if you were so inspired and you really wanted to challenge yourself, it has the built-in tests, it has the data for you to access, it lets you practice with Node, it lets you get familiar with, you know, the module.exports and everything, but this is double black diamond or whatever. I'm not a skier. I think that's the hardest one. This is extraordinarily hard. So don't expect to just look at this and be like, oh yeah, this is easy. Because even for me at times I'm kind of like, I kind of forget and I need to refresh my memory on exactly how to do this. So that's why I brought up Code Wars at the beginning, is because, you know, just for practicing like fundamental rudimentary JavaScript, it's really nice. But to reiterate again, now that I've spoken with Melissa, I understand that she just wants you guys to be able to like build some static HTML websites. And knowing that now, we can definitely start focusing on that. We have like the next 2 weeks to do that. So like you guys have like a pretty great foundation of JavaScript, even if it feels like it's a little shaky. Whereas now that we're going to start focusing on HTML and stuff like that, which I personally think is a little easier to understand. It's a little more like copying and pasting and just reading what stuff does, rather than like JavaScript is like, here's a problem, now you need to solve it. So like HTML elements, again, there's W3 schools, and if we go to MDN, HTML elements.
Yeah, the thing I'll be most proud of is the site I stole that code from.
Yeah. Well, that's programming in a nutshell, somewhat. Now, I mean, if you're on the cutting edge and you're developing the code that Tesla uses on their car sensors to detect how far away, you know, an object is, that's one thing. But when we're talking about HTML and JavaScript, like there's not really a lot of ways to like write HTML differently. Like we have divs, we have headers, we have list elements, we have the main tag and stuff, and this will detail everything that involves. But I mean, at the end of the day, there's only so many HTML tags, and you can style stuff differently. So, like, if you wanted to have the input look differently, we could type in HTML input attributes.
I won't be just taking code off the total page. I'll look for ideas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I copy and paste code all the time. Like, I'll be the first to admit it. Again, it's like if somebody wrote and discovered that 1 + 1 = 2, like, nobody's expecting you to prove that again. So, like, here, this is very basic. Now, I'm not gonna go up to JP Morgan and be like, hey, I think I should use this form for your new website. You know, like, this is definitely not production grade. But just as like an introductory lesson, you know, or like a little example, it kind of gives you an idea of like HTML and how it works. It's just lines of markdown that reflect once the actual computer runs it. So yeah, like obviously this is not what chase.com looks like. As a matter of fact, to bring the point home, a lot of developers these days use frameworks. So if I open this up to kind of go off on a little bit of a tangent here, hopefully I still have. So this is a React developer tool. If I go to Facebook, this should light up. Nope. What websites use React? It's either React, Angular, or Vue. Sometimes you can tell by looking for the HTML, but I'm not going to troll through that right now. Why isn't this working? Well, if you're using Firefox or Chrome, if you want to see if a website is using one of these frameworks, you can go to your add-ons or extensions. And so React is one framework. Angular. Oh, I need to like get more. Oh my gosh. It's been so long since I've used Mozilla. What the heck? Where do you get more extensions? How did I do this? Well, I know how to do it in Opera. The only problem is Opera doesn't have these tools. Where do I get more? Does anybody use Firefox? Can help me out? I have these. All right, yeah. Help me. These allow you to view and debug. If I could figure out, I feel like a dummy. It says recommended extensions. I just want to search them. So Angular, we'll add that. Okay. And then the other JavaScript framework, if you were so curious, is Vue, which Google is behind. Cool. All right, so restart. And now in the upper right, we'll have this little like thingy over here. We got Vue. I don't see Angular, but if we go to, let's see, Google. What are they using? I forgot Firefox does this. Now, Google minifies everything, so it's probably going to be hard to see exactly what framework they're using. I know for a fact that Google's behind developing Vue. Vue, JavaScript. Or rather, it was a former Google developer who works on this. I have a feeling this isn't working because I don't know why the Vue website wouldn't be written in Vue. But hopefully you get my point. There's a ton. These are the frameworks that companies look for when you're applying for jobs. Linked list. Darn it. Let's take a look. So here's .NET. This is C#. JavaScript. Vue. What do you know? ASP.NET is C#. So C#, if you go to Udemy, now this is abstract. This is like, you know, if you want to continue learning after this program, if you want to actually try and get a job as a developer. I am still recording this, but right here, $11. C# basics. That doesn't say .NET. Unity. Oh, there it is. Right here. Learning C#.NET programming for beginners. It's $11. It's always on sale, so don't worry about that. JavaScript, we have a good foundation of that. SQL, again, I'm sure Udemy has some good docs on that. Actually, you know what? Code Academy has an amazing free SQL course. It's great. If you want to learn SQL, don't pay money for it. Come here, go to full catalog, and now I'm not logged in. It might make me log in. Okay, so I'll just switch to my browser where I am logged in. Create an account on Code Academy. Go to catalog. Click on full catalog. I think I was already there, but if you scroll down, I think I completed it right here. So I'm not just blowing smoke up your butt. It's really, really good. I thought this course was great. There's a free course on C# here. Node, really all you need to know, so this is Pro, so it's paid, but Node is honestly just JavaScript on your computer instead of on your browser. Asynchronous JavaScript is Ajax. That's our last unit. That's what we're going to be talking about with DOM. Did I release that? Well, I released DOM. I didn't release Ajax. So, I mean, it's very, very similar. So Ajax is asynchronous JavaScript. See a couple. So here's a free Code Academy course on using HTML and CSS. In case you didn't want to use Galvanize's curriculum, this one is free. Let's click on that. Let's see how it goes. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's used to give websites structure with text, links, images, and other fundamental elements. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. It's used to change the appearance of HTML elements. Like, this is free, right? Like, I mean, why? I mean, if you really were interested, why not do this, right? I mean, it's free. It also has a free course on jQuery. So this is like the rudimentary, it's technically a library. I don't really want to get into the difference between a library and a framework right now, but for all intents and purposes, you can think of it as like the first JavaScript framework before React, before Angular, before all these other ones. This is what a lot of people use to program websites in like the early 2000s. Deploy a website. If you want to learn how to host your website online, free. Express. This is how you would use JavaScript to communicate with a server, and you would be able to actually use SQL to store data and serve that to a front HTML web page. Express.js. It's JavaScript. Express is amazing. Highly recommend it again. Now, maybe wait till after the course, because yeah, it's a little more complicated. But I just want to show you guys, like, I'm not getting paid by these guys. I really do just love this website, and it has a ton of great information on here in case you just wanted to like brush up on something that you maybe didn't quite understand from the Galvanize curriculum. Like, I personally think the HTML is really good here, but maybe if you wanted to do the JavaScript on here, you could go ahead and do the JavaScript on Code Academy, and once again, it's free. It's up to you. But yeah, just remember that this resource is available to you, and if you were looking for a job, if your goal is to become like a professional developer, all you have to do is look at job postings. Junior, so I don't know if I explained this already, but when I type in junior developer, that means entry-level developer. It's split up into 3 categories. There's junior, mid, and senior. So junior would be an entry-level developer position. So we can see here, these people they know that they're looking for like entry-level positions. And again, .NET is C#. You'll see that a lot. You'll probably see Java a lot. Oh, this is in Texas. If you feel like moving, more C#, Microsoft SQL Server, SQL, HTML, CSS. XML is essentially JavaScript with HTML for all intents and purposes. And then JSON is just JavaScript objects.
What's the average salary for a junior developer?
It really does depend on where you're at. Maybe if we go to Glassdoor, that would give us a better idea. If you guys haven't heard of this site. Because like in Seattle, Seattle has like Boeing, Amazon, and Microsoft, but their cost of living is super high. So like they get paid more to compensate for the cost of living. So right here, this says anywhere from about 70K to 6 figures. USAA 64K to 130K. USAA is looking for some experience in Java. So Docker is kind of like Git, but it's for live versions. So where Git stores pictures of our project at certain points, Docker allows us to take a picture of our project and have different versions for different OSs. So if somebody's a Mac, then you have a Docker image for Mac. If somebody's Windows, you have a Docker image for Windows. I don't really know Docker all that well. I'm just kind of speaking about like what I've heard it being used for. So I don't have that much personal experience with it, but that's what that is. Git, GitLab, it's Git. Maven is for Java. So, and then Node. Java is really prevalent out here. If you want to be a professional developer out here, you could probably make it if you learned if you wanted to do just strictly JavaScript, you would need to look for a front-end developer position because you may have heard like back-end and front-end. JavaScript is predominantly used on the front end, but a lot of companies here in Arizona, they use Java as their back-end. So in order to become like a full stack developer, you may have heard that term before, they would want you to know front-end technologies like JavaScript and then also back-end technologies like SQL. Node is technically a back-end technology if you're using Express, and they'll say that sometimes, but Java is also a very, very popular back-end tool, especially in Arizona. I see it a lot. Hey, Heroku, we're just talking about that. Desirable skills. Haml, Sass, these are all CSS jammies. I don't have experience with this, so but I know that they're related to CSS. Broad knowledge of JavaScript. So here again, we're talking about React. This is what I was saying. Like if you're looking for a job, they start at $80,000, and all you need to do is learn React. If you wanted to learn React, and Udemy. Man, I really wish I could learn React, but this is too expensive. So I'm just gonna.
Were you just trying to say you were listening?
Yeah. Now, depending on this content, maybe we could take a quick look and see like where we're gonna be starting. Writing our first React code. Let's take a look. It's not gonna let me. Hey, I know this guy. He's on YouTube.
We know what React actually is. It's trying to get our hands dirty. For that, I was at copen.io. That is like a web.
Copen.io is like JS Fiddle.
Very simple HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Apps are really more like a playground. Let's now also give it a width. Let's say 200 pixels. And
So this is a preview of one of the videos inside of this course.
now we have this hard light.
And you can see, so he declares the class person, and he's using CSS with the dot because it's a class. If it was an ID, he would have to use a hashtag. Box shadow is what's giving it this effect of levitating off the page. Yep. This is great because what I'm interpreting from this is he's probably kind of like warming you up to React. So this is probably a good course for like if you know JS and HTML and CSS and stuff, like this kind of warms you up to that process. He's probably going to start doing DOM. These are CDNs. We'll talk about those. It's literally just a copy and paste thing. Like jQuery, if you want to use jQuery, you would put script, and then you'd put the CDN, which is these URLs, and then you'd put close script, and then you can do everything jQuery in your HTML file. It's like literally that easy. Babel is a build file. It helps you like build your programs. See if he actually starts writing some JavaScript. So it's cut off, but at the top, I'm guessing he's returning this. Yeah. So this is React right here at like the most fundamental level. You could see he was talking about React DOM. That's because React doesn't actually use HTML's DOM. It creates its own. And so that allows it to load and render things a lot quicker, but it also takes a lot longer to initially like load it up, because once you load a React app, it has to spin up its own DOM, and then once you're actually in the React app, then it's like fast and it works really nice. But yeah, that's why he typed React DOM. So React DOM is not the same thing as the normal DOM that we are going to be working with in the next couple weeks. Are there any questions before we wrap up for the weekend? Anything at all?
So we need to figure out what our site's going to be.
Come up with something that you would feel proud to create, to present, and once I get that all from you guys, I'll help teach you HTML and stuff like that, and then I'll start working with you guys independently to help you build your websites as well. So like if one person wants to do a bunch of images, I'll show you how to have like a website with a bunch of images. If somebody else wants to like build a mock store, I'll show you how to build a mock store and so on and so forth. But homework for the weekend, if you're looking for something to do, complete this unit, HTML. right here when it says submit this, it submits it to me so I can grade it. So I can give feedback, and I'm going to give constructive feedback. I'm going to say, I saw that you did this very well. I think you could maybe improve on this over here, right? But these don't have broken tests, and these are actually pretty well written. As a matter of fact, most of them have references. So like right here, like it's easy to kind of like overlook this, but like if you're stuck and you don't understand these things, like almost everything they talk about is hyperlinked, right? So I think that this curriculum is actually pretty well written, and I think that if anything, you guys should at least try to get through this unit before Monday, and then maybe as a stretch goal, work on the CCF data structures. Another stretch would be getting into CSS, and if you have any questions, I'll be available on Slack. Yeah, and as we start to talk about HTML and CSS, we'll bring UI frameworks in, which is essentially more CSS, and then we'll finally wrap it all up with integrating JavaScript into our HTML and CSS, which is very easy.